Greetings, all of you. I'm Gerard Modo. In our last session, we talked of pasture, but now we're talking of types of cattle feeds. Cattle feeds, it means emmere y'ente. Okay? So emmere y'ente, that is what you're going to look at. What do the cattle feed on? So ente zirya ki? So when you are talking about that, we shall talk about types of cattle feeds. For example, have what we call the concentrates. That is one. Is what we call the additives. They are what we call supplements, succulent feeds, foliages. All those are types of cattle feeds. We shall look at each in detail. So first, let us first talk about what we call concentrates. So concentrates, abatera okulunda enkoko, they are called obulungo. They are so called obulungo. They are normally given to cattle. So cattle, when they are given obulungo, we say they are given concentrates. So from there, we can ask ourselves a question: what are concentrates? Concentrates are feeds with high value nutrients and they have less moisture. So abali olabeko ku concentrates ezo, they are normally mixed in poultry feeds. Ze mutera okulaba abalunda enkoko mu chachu there is also what they call broken. They mix there something that most times they are always brown. So that is the so-called concentrate. They have high value of nutrients. High value nutrients. Mubamu ebirungo bingi ebyomugaso. They are saying concentrates are given to animals to fatten. So ente nabo mumukimanyi nti they always those concentrates are given to exotic breeds of chicken. Those are the common things. But for cattle, you can also give them to local ones. But as you know, the local ones, they have a very low output. So most of these improved methods of improved types of cattle feeds, they are given to exotic breeds, but they are mainly given to animals to fatten. So examples of concentrates feeds, there's one, bone meal. Bone meal, they are particles got from bones. All they are so-called calcium. They are called shells. So they are shells. So they are a source of calcium. Babuyita obusonko, a so-called obusonko. Then another one is cotton seed cake, which is a source of proteins and fats. Cotton seed cakes, cotton, they call it cotton. Another one is maize bran. Maize bran is a source of carbohydrates. Then rock salt, that is a source of sodium. Blood meal, which is a source of iron. Okay. Plus also legumes. Legumes, they are also sources of proteins because most of the legumes, they are sources of proteins. So they can also be, can also talk about what we call the refuges. So the refuges are fibrous feeds with iron food value. Refuges are a source of fibrous, so they are a source of iron. They are fibrous. Fibrous simply means fiber. So you talked about refuges while you were studying about food in primary 4, and you said that refuges are used for the help in digestion of food, or the easy digestion. They help in digestion of food. Things like preventing constipation and preventing indigestion, they are the uses of refuges. Okay. So also we talk about examples of refuges. There is hay, young grass, and dry maize stalks. All those we have already looked at them. Hay, we said it is dry grass. Another one is the young grass. That one is self-explanatory. Then dry maize stalks. Like sorry when they are dry. Okay. So you can add them in the cattle's feeds so that they add nutrients. Okay, but we've said that the refuges supply iron to the what? To the meals. So we are saying still saturated feeds. These are feeds with high moisture content and low fiber. So we talked about saturated fruits while studying both in P4 and P6. Saturated fruits, we said they are the ones with the fresh pericarps. But here, see with saturated feeds, they have a high moisture content. Manji and low fiber. So they normally supply water to the what? To the animal, even other things, but mainly they supply water. So things like sweet potato vines are malagala, the so-called malagala. Another one is banana peelings, heavy water, and grass. Okay, so those are the things which you can talk about the what uh, which you can talk about when talking about succulent feeds. Then additives segeza ebintu ebigattibwamu. So we are saying these are drugs, flavors, hormones added to animal feeds. So drugs, muzimanyi, they are chemicals. It can be a drug for maybe for a certain disease, preventing a given disease, treating a given disease, or even other things. Then flavors, hormones added to animal feeds. Then there are also what we call foliages. These are feeds that have been preserved and given to animals. Okay, so we get our feeds, we keep them somewhere, and then after we give them to the animals. Okay, another question, it is here. You state the importance of feeding animals. So feeding animals, how is it important? Because you would say, let me live with a cow, never see what I acquire, but how is it important? So remember, you cannot get anything from where you did not invest. So if you cannot demand the cow milk when you never did what? You cannot demand the cow milk when you did not feed it well. You have to have fed it very well so that you can also demand the output from the cow. Okay? So n'okugirisa obungi so that nayo kuwa byoyagala. So feeding animals increases what we call milk product. Feeding animals increases milk production. That is one. So ente bw'ogiriisa obulungi ekuweereza amata, ekweyongeza ku mungi w'amata gekola ki geekuwa. Another one, feeding animals boosts the animal's immunity. So as we've been saying up there, we provide the animal with the feeds that contain iron. For example, iron is that food value of iron is important in blood formation. So that means that whenever you feed the animal well, the immunity is boosted because some of those nutrients that are contained in food, they help to prevent diseases that come as a result of poor feeding. Okay. Then we are talking about feeding enables animals to fatten. That is why always muziriisa nnyo. So entegyekoma okulya ennyo if it is feeding well and in a healthy way, si kulya buli kaseera, but feeding in a healthy way, it has to fatten ekugejja. And for people who carry out business, the fatter the animal, the higher the income. Okay. So we also talk about cows are given a block of salt to lick to simulate milk production. Nti ente tuziwa omunnyo omungi zisobole okwongeza okukola ki okutuwa amata. So normally we give salt. Salt always contain a mineral which is called sodium. So that sodium stimulates milk production. That is the importance of the salt there. It contains the sodium that stimulates milk production. So the other thing we are going to look at, since we are talking about feed, is we are going to talk about what we call the digestive system of cattle. So in this session now, I need to talk about what we call ruminant animals. Ruminant animals are animals which chew cud. Ruminant animals are animals which chew cud. Hope you have ever seen ente ebeera awo nga togiwadde byakulya but nga yeegaaya. Embuzi ebeera awo nga togiwadde kyakulya but nga yakwaki nga yeegaaya. That is what we call chewing cud. And cud is that food gy'olaba gy'eddamu okulya. Wabeerawo emmere gy'eddamu okulya omulundi ogwokubiri. That we call cud. That is why we call them ruminant animals, that they chew cud. So buli ensolo yonna gy'olaba ng'eddamu okulya naye nga togiwadde kyakulya, oba beeba eri eba ebijja ludda wa? So is what we call chewing cud. Other animals that do not do such, they are called non-ruminant animals, which do not chew cud. And human beings are among, because whichever thing you eat, it is digested inside the stomach. So we are going to look to know, why do they chew cud? And where does the cud come from? Why don't the human beings chew the cud? Okay, when you look at this part here, we have what we call the esophagus. Esophagus is the so-called middle. If you don't call it the esophagus, you can call it the, all of you say that. What is it? If you don't call it the esophagus, you can call it the gullet. So from there, from the gullet, we go to what we call the rumen, which we call the first stomach. Another one is the reticulum, which we call the second stomach. And another one is the omasum, the third stomach. And the last one is the abomasum. First one is the rumen, another one is reticulum, another one is omasum, another one is abomasum. So things like the liver, the small intestine, cecum, rectum, anus, large intestine, bile duct, pancreas, you all know them from your digestion. They are all well described, and their function is the same as the ones we described in the digestion in human being, digestion in man. So we can talk about the function of the parts. The first one, we can talk about the mouth. The mouth is where food is chewed and mixed with saliva or tugaiza. So normally you see that one. So that is where chewing takes place. Omwente emmere breaking it down tugigaya. That is what we call chewing, mixed with saliva. So as in human beings, although the saliva of the cattle contains salivary amylase, what and what and what. Okay. Then another one is, it is where, the rumen. We'll talk about another part, which is the rumen. It is where food is stored temporarily before it is taken back to the mouth for rumination or further chewing. So there is what we call regurgitation. Regurgitation. So food wejja neeyita wano, wejja neeyita mu esophagus n'ekka mu rumen, there is a process that occurs there which we call fermentation. So in the rumen, what occurs there is fermentation of food. Fermentation of food simply means the food is acted on by bacteria that do what we call fermentation. Bacteria ferment by feeding on that food which is there. So they do what they call fermentation. So fermentation takes place in the rumen. So from there, food is regurgitated. Regurgitated is like you make it to move around. So regurgitated, and it goes back to the what? To the mouth. Eita wano weba to rumen here. This is where I'm talking about here at the rumen. This part here you're seeing there. The rumen here. Okay? You're seeing the rumen. The rumen, you can see it there. The rumen here. You're seeing where the rumen is here. The food goes back to the what? To the mouth. Then after there, the animal further chews the food. Eddamu n'egigayo omulundi ogwokubiri. Kati obudde ng'emmere emaze okuyita eno mu rumen n'eddayo ogwokubiri, gwe obudde bwe tulabiramu ente ng'eri mu kwegaaya naye ng'emmere twagigiwadde ddi? Twagigiwadde dda. That is what we call rumination, or what we call chewing cud. So emmere bw'emala okuddamu okugaayizibwa omulundi ogwokubiri ng'emaze okuyita mu rumen n'eryoka eddayo, bw'eddamu n'egigayo ogwokubiri, ate guno omulundi tegenda kuyita mu rumen, egenda kuyitamu, egenda kujjamu omasum. Egenda kujjamu reticulum, the second stomach. So we are saying the rumen is the first stomach of ruminants. So from the when the food is moves from the mouth of Mudogokubi, it goes to the the reticulum. So we are saying it separates chewed food from unchewed food. Another one will say it retains and stores foreign material like stones. The reticulum is the second stomach of ruminants. Okay. So you can also retain this nti amayinja gonna gonna ekiyo kyonna ekibeera kikola kiyingidde mu nte nga si mmere, it is retained wakisigala mu reticulum. So ask me, why do the ruminant animals chew cud ate nga ffe we don't chew cud? So the reason would be, so plant materials, animals and plants, they have a difference. So plant materials always have what we call a cell wall. Cell wall covers all the plants, so it is like a hard outer covering. Either plant plant, because it is found in the plant cell. So every plant is covered by what we call a cell wall. So to digest or to break down that cell wall, we need a lot of energy, and those enzymes that can break it down, that cellulose cell wall, it is not there in a ruminant, in ruminants, but in non-ruminants, cellulose, the enzyme that is responsible for breaking it down, the whatever the cellulose, it is there. Okay, hope I'm clear there. So that means that for the ruminants, they have to go on and digest the food the second time, so that they further break down that cellulose, so that digestion can take place. Okay. Then next is the food from the reticulum. It goes to the omasum. The omasum, the function. So another example of the stomach is the omasum, one of the parts of the stomach of the ruminant animal. It has so the stomach of the ruminant animal has 4 chambers. We've talked about the first chamber, which is the rumen. There is another chamber which we've called the reticulum, the second stomach, and the third chamber is called the omasum. So we are talking about the omasum. It grinds or crushes food into small soluble particles. Another one, it is where absorption of water takes place. So those are the functions of the omasum. Nti emmere wemala okuyita mu reticulum ejjamu omasum, where absorption of water amazzi tugajjamu, we use it for other purposes, other body purposes. So there's a note there. Omasum is the third stomach of ruminants. So we talk about the abomasum. Masum, we are saying, is where digestion of food by enzymes starts from. So abomasum is called the true stomach. True stomach. So everything that takes place in the stomach of the human beings takes place in the abomasum of the ruminant animal, or a cow. So the examples of ruminants, they include the cows, goats, and sheep. Buli kisolo kyokya kyolaba nga kichewing cud, we call chewing cud okwezza obwenkulumu. After feeding a cow with the grass, eddamu omulundi ogwokubiri ate neddamu n'olaba nga egugaaya. That is what we call chewing cud. So that marks the end of our session here. Next time we shall look at grazing in cattle.